live streaming on YouTube, everybody. So thanks for joining early and looking forward to having an interactive and engaging conversation with Michael Gray. Welcome, everybody. We're still a few minutes out from start time, so thanks for joining early. This is such a valuable presentation. I've seen it, and it's so impactful, so I'm really excited that the community is going to get to share in the wisdom that this father has, Michael Gray. So Lenora, I love your screensaver. Be brilliant. I use that reminder often. So, technology, while friendly, is not being friendly to Michael or Nick Schrottweiser. So I'm just gonna resend them the link. Please stand by.
Perfect. All right, I'm going to try to join from my phone right now.
Awesome. Thanks, Nick. Bye. Welcome.
Hello.
Hi. So thank you all for joining us. You know, as everyone kind of zooms in from wherever they are on this lovely Monday. Are we on Tuesday? Whatever night it is. Thanks for being here. Just going to give Nick Schrottweiser a second to jump on, and then I'll turn it over to the amazing Michael Gray, who is here tonight on behalf of the Fentanyl Coalition to talk about something that really personally affected him and is something so vital for us as a community to be aware of. So I'm really grateful for his wisdom and his awareness around this topic. And I also want to just give a shout out to Adrian, Alana, Amy, all the HSA presidents who have joined and are kind of giving a voice to this really, again, important message. So thank you all for joining. And for anyone who may get the information but couldn't join, or if you want to share, Schreiber HSA has a new YouTube page, and this is live streaming right now on the YouTube page. Go us. And it's also going to be available for people to watch later on the YouTube page. So it will live on. So that's really good news. And the more people that can get this message out, the better. So I don't see Nick quite yet, but Michael, do you want to just jump in and say hello, or do you want to give it another few minutes? It's only 7:01.
Yeah, I can jump in and say hello. Can you hear me okay?
I'm gonna actually just have everyone mute really quickly, just reminding everyone of the Zoom rules. Like 2 years we haven't done this, but just quickly, if you have questions, please put them in the chat. We'll moderate them as we go along. And if you could leave your microphones on mute, that'd be terrific, because this is an open Zoom call, and the easier it is to hear Michael, the better. So just pay attention, mute yourselves, and then jump in the chat if you have a question, and pop them in as this streamlines along, so we can just keep the interaction going. Anything else about Zoom rules that I'm forgetting, ladies? Been doing this forever. All right, that seems good. Okay, now I'm going to turn it over to our really terrific person with information, Michael Gray. Thank you again for being here, and appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Thanks everybody for coming and joining us. This is certainly important information we'll talk about tonight, and I'll try to tell you some things that you don't know and that you haven't really thought about. And so that's kind of always the best way to enjoy a presentation like this, is to hear some things that you weren't really necessarily thinking about with this particular crisis. I have a different way of looking at it. It's quite unique and quite compelling. So hopefully it'll make sense to a lot of you, and it'll be something that you want to take and forward on to whomever else you think might benefit from the information. So, are we waiting for Nick, or shall I get into it, or what do you think?
Nick is here. So
I'm here. Yeah, I'm off my phone. I'm here. Michael, good to see you.
Hey, Nick.
Yeah, Nick is officially here. And if you all want to put on your cameras, this is super casual. Again, not really sure what day it is, but Monday, super casual Monday. So feel free to put your cameras on, so we can have a little more personal connection if you'd like. No pressure, but it's lovely to see faces at any hour. So anyway, thanks again. All right, Mike.
All set? Ready to go? Okay. All right, let me move that over, and here we go. Okay, everybody, thanks for joining, and I'll talk a little bit about the opioid crisis tonight, what you would all probably generically call the opioid crisis. I call it the fentanyl scourge, because fentanyl is really at the core of what we'll talk about. It's a new and deadly paradigm, and I'll explain what all that is over the next few minutes. I would like to just, before starting, as they always say, tell you what I'm going to tell you. And what I'm going to tell you is that this crisis is not what you think it is. It's not what you believe it to be. The new paradigm that I will speak of is something you probably haven't thought of before, but it is very clearly what's going on, and it's really something that you'll need to know if you want to keep your own family and loved ones safe, as well as continue to get the word spread across America about what really has to be done about this problem of fentanyl in our country. So I start with this simple phrase, everybody. Despite what you have heard all over the news, all over the media, despite how people discuss it, I want to start with a very, very simple concept. America does not have an overdose crisis. Yes, that's what we talk about constantly. We talk about the overdose crisis in America, but we do not have an overdose crisis. And by not understanding the meaning of this statement I make, we are preventing ourselves from being able to find the solutions to this crisis and we continue to see it expand unabated as we stand around bewildered, wondering what to do. So what do I mean by we don't have an overdose crisis? Well, it's very simple. What is an overdose? Here's the definition of an overdose. And the key words in the definition of overdose are intentionality or agency. In other words, you have to be trying to take something to an appropriate dose, and you either mistakenly or perhaps intentionally took too much of it and you were injured. That's an overdose. What is a crisis? It comes from the Greek word, which means a sudden change. Well, I'm going to show you something about overdose and crisis. An overdose crisis, then, putting the two together, is a sudden change in the pattern of people taking too much of something they intended to take. Overdose is what they intended to take. A crisis is when there's a sudden change in something negative. So an overdose crisis would mean that suddenly overdoses as a concept went off the rails and went crazy. But that's not what we saw. Here's all drug overdose deaths from 1979 to 2014. And what you're going to see is that it's a completely linear graph. Look at it. It's actually 0.97 linear. It's a linear graph. For every move in X in time, you get a move in Y in deaths. It's absolutely.
Michael, are you sharing your screen? Because I don't see graphs. Sorry, just making
sure. No.
I gave you co-host permission, so just making sure.
Oh, no, I didn't actually take the action to share. Sorry.
It's okay. And then you might want to just back up a tiny bit.
Yeah, I'm going to go back a couple.
Well, make sure everyone knows what fentanyl is, just in like the whole edification of.
Oh, that comes in a few minutes.
Okay.
Okay. So as I say, we do not have an overdose crisis. Everybody sees that on the screen now? Oh, I'm so sorry.
Not yet.
No. Oh, no. What am I doing wrong? I think I just clicked something.
There you go.
We're good now? Okay. All right. Well, I'm a little embarrassed. Okay. So we do not have an overdose crisis. Now you see the statement, right? Okay. So what did I say after that? We do not have an overdose crisis because overdose is something that implies intentionality or agency. I tried to take something to a certain dosage. I took too much accidentally, intentionally, and I got myself hurt. Okay. A crisis, on the other hand, means something that is a sudden change, an intense difficulty of a sudden change. So when you put the two words together, an overdose crisis is a sudden change in the pattern of people taking too much of something they intended to take. We don't have anything like that going on in America, because here's drug death in America of true overdoses from 1979 to 2014. No crisis here. It's sad, it's tragic, it's terrible, but it's not crisis because it never suddenly changed. In fact, this pattern of overdose in America stayed the same for about 100 years. And 1979, 2014 is the most modern good data we have to show that this is a 0.97 linear graph. In other words, this is a linear problem. What does it track to? Well, it tracks to addiction. So for every so many people who get addicted, some number of them over the course of 8 or 10 years will take too much one day and die under what we call an overdose. That would be an overdose crisis, but there is no crisis in overdose. So this is what we talk about all the time, an overdose crisis that doesn't exist. And in fact, this is what would have happened had the situation stayed unchanged. From 1979 to 2025, still no crisis. It's sad, it's tragic, it's getting worse, and it's something we should try to solve and deal with, but it's not a crisis. So why are you thinking so much about this drug problem, this fentanyl problem, and you perceive it as a crisis? Why? Because this is what's actually happening in drug death, not overdose, but drug death. So when you look at that red line that I'm showing now, this is the actual, okay, from 1979 to 2021. And look what happened since 2014. Look at that linear graph for 50 years that went nonlinear. Well, I'm going to show you here why that's not an overdose crisis, because these deaths are not overdoses. And I'm going to explain that in a moment. See, this is the overdose. And this is what would have happened with addiction type overdoses from 1979 to 2025. And that's not a crisis. But what actually happened is this. And I'm here to talk about this crisis. This red line above that green dotted line, that is what should have happened. So what you're seeing right here at the end of this white, what you're seeing at this point in 2021, this is what it should have been down here. And yet we got this. So that difference between here and there that happened since just back in here in 2014, that, my friends, is a crisis. But it's not a crisis of overdose. No, we do not have an overdose crisis. We have a very serious but stable overdose problem in America. So where's the crisis? We have a poisoning crisis. I don't know if that's the best word in the world, but that's the best word I can think of. We have a crisis of poisoning, of people getting poisoned by drugs that they're not intending to take. That's the crisis. And that crisis is a crisis because it's reaching into every community. The overdose crisis was always limited to people who suffered from addiction or substance use disorder. The crisis is happening because it has expanded into all communities in sort of 3 dimensions. Okay, so we do have a poisoning crisis. What is poisoning? Look at the key words here: low agency, no intentionality. It's harmful or pernicious. It's been administered. It kills or injures. These are all active words. These are things being done to someone by something else. No intentionality, no agency on the part of the person. So what we have in America is a drug death crisis, which is the result of layering a massively expanding poisoning crisis onto a chronic but stable overdose problem. I'm spending a lot of time on these terms and these words for very good reason, because we keep giving 100% of our crisis resources and our crisis energy and our crisis funding to the stable part of the problem. Why? Because we fail to distinguish between overdoses and poisonings. And it's that latter word, poisonings, that are the crisis part of the problem. So this means that we're failing to see these two problems that are profoundly different in nature. So I'm here to help you understand the crisis, the true crisis, because we need to spread this message and demand support for a crisis which is killing right now probably 75,000 kids a year. That right now, as a country, we are doing nothing to prevent. Why? Because we continue to put all of our solution energy into an old paradigm of a problem that's not in crisis, and we ignore the part that is because we jumble it all into one. And I'm going to pull it apart for you. Okay, so who am I? I represent the Actus Foundation, and I represent the Fentanyl Awareness Coalition. The Actus Foundation is a family foundation. You see my Actus shirt, that's my company, Actus Analytical. So when my daughter passed away in 2018 from a fentanyl toxicity, I started a foundation to bring to the world the word on what happened to her and how she was something different. She wasn't what people thought of as an opioid death. It started with my own confusion. And as I thought through what happened with my daughter, I realized there's a whole dynamic of death occurring out there that we don't know about. So I started a foundation to begin to bring that word to the world. What I realized was there were many people like me who were starving for a voice, who were looking for words to put to their frustrating and confused experience. And they heard my new paradigm and they joined up. So many people wanted to join. So we formed a coalition with my friend Eddie Kobilis over in New Jersey, whose son died from a single Xanax pill, or so he thought was Xanax. We founded the Fentanyl Awareness Coalition, and we are now a coalition of 10,000 members across the United States who are all arguing for some attention to this new paradigm of death. Okay, so who am I to do all of this? My credentials: I'm 30 years in the business of scientific instrumentation. I've worked in various kinds of technologies. My market specialties include pharma manufacturing, pharma QA, and counterfeit drug detection. So I've done all sorts of technical work in this area for many, many years before it ever touched me. So I bring a lot of that expertise to it. I'm a business owner of a small instruments company that makes spectrometers. I live here in Manhasset, married, the father of 2 children, including one who's passed away, and I'm a member of St. Mary's Parish. But my most important qualification is the loss of my daughter to fentanyl on January 11th of 2018, sitting right in this chair where I am now at 6:19 p.m. I got the call. And my goal is that none of you will get that call. Okay, so fentanyl changes everything. Let's talk about fentanyl, okay? Let's talk about fentanyl and why it changes everything. Okay, here's our first little fun fact about fentanyl. We were losing between in 2021, we lost between 150 and 180,000 kids. Just so you understand, you'll hear the CDC number. I think it's 110 now. The CDC number is underreported by about between 30 and 50%. That's not controversial. That's not a political statement. It's a fact that it's underreported. So you have to bias it up by about 30 to 50%. So realistically, it's 150,000 or more. That is a 747 load of young people, American people, crashing every single day, 365 days a year. Now just picture, if today on Monday, it is Monday, right? Today on Monday, we had a 747 crash filled with young people. That'd be bad, right? What if it happened again tomorrow? That'd be really bad. By tomorrow afternoon, CNN would be 24/7. By Wednesday night, everybody would be half an aeronautical engineer by how we'd be talking about the planes and why they crashed. How about when it happens again Wednesday and Thursday and Friday and Saturday and Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and continues 365 days a year for 8 years unabated? Those are the numbers we're talking about. And yet, all we talk about is this problem of addiction, which isn't a crisis at all. So these are otherwise healthy, mostly young people. This death rate is going 30% year on year, and it's not stopping. We're not putting a pinch to it. Fentanyl has rapidly displaced all other opioid in the marketplace. Heroin, the old diacetylmorphine, almost doesn't exist. But who's at risk in the fentanyl crisis? Normal kids with no problems, no indicators, no warning signs. It's the first time. It's that first time when they just do that one thing that I bet a lot of people on this call have done when they were that age. But today it kills them. Look at this chart over here. Look at how fentanyl and its analogs has taken over the death. Look at what's happened. Look how suddenly a society can't absorb a change like that. It can't. It can't absorb it and deal with it appropriately. It's just too much. Now we're seeing it in cocaine. All these stories of the cocaine that's been infiltrated. In Connecticut, they just confirmed marijuana with fentanyl. It's in everything. It's everywhere. So therefore, this is the crisis. And let me explain very quickly how this happened and what the paradigm shift is. These three bullets, or these three bubbles on this chart, really explain everything. From 1979, or really all the way back to 1922, to 2014, drug death was predictable, and it somewhat tracks a little bit with population growth, but not quite. And everything's going to change in 2015. In 2013, in 2013, the Chinese government decides to dump a whole bunch of fentanyl onto the American market. This was done by Chinese pharma factories, Chinese chemical companies, and with the full support of the Chinese government. They decided to displace our heroin market, diacetylmorphine, which is what most of the chronic addicted drug users are using, and they put this fentanyl in. And for reasons that would take me a long time to explain, I go through a whole business model on this in other contexts. The fentanyl product is basically a replacement to diacetylmorphine, aka heroin, but it is vastly, vastly, vastly superior as a product. So the drug traffickers jumped in with this fentanyl stuff and went whole hog right away, to the point where about 4 years ago, I predicted the disappearance of heroin in 5 years. And everybody said I was crazy, and heroin has just about disappeared now 4 years later. There's just no reason to sell it anymore. Fentanyl is so vastly superior. It's got some issues, but we'll talk about those. So what happens is the Chinese government supports their companies to dump this stuff into the American market, and it takes like wildfire because it's such a superior product. So the problem is it changes the death rate among users. If I look at this overdose chart, it is tracking somewhere way up here an addiction issue. So as addiction goes up and up and up, some number of addicts at a very predictable rate will die. That rate changes right here. And that's because of this chemical fentanyl. And I'll explain in a minute the detail. When these traffickers mix fentanyl, they cannot make it safe. About 20% of all of the doses, quote unquote, that they'll make are lethal. About 20%. And it can't be any different. It's not possible by physics. So what happens is now where overdose was a kind of death where somebody took too much, accidentally or intentionally, now all of a sudden death comes from people who didn't take too much. They just got the wrong bag, the wrong part of the mix. Okay, so this death rate goes up, but then the real change happens. The Chinese give over manufacturing to the Mexican drug cartels. And that sounds ugly. Mexican drug cartels is a scary kind of ugly thing to hear. But it isn't about their violence and their cartel nature that's the point here. The point here is that they're expert drug traffickers, world-class marketeers. So they got this fentanyl stuff that was displacing all the heroin on American streets. And what they said is, well, why limit ourselves to the 2 million people who snort, shoot, or smoke pure powdered drugs? Why don't we take this powder and press it into the oxy pills, the Vicodin pills, and all those pills that these kids take? And instead of having 2 million hardened heroin addicts, we'll have 20 million American kids to feed this stuff into. And a new industry was born. But remember what I said, the death rate for fentanyl is higher than it is for traditional diacetylmorphine. So this higher death rate, had it stayed to just the addicts, would have been one thing. But when the Mexicans started pressing into pills and getting it into the hands of these 20 million American kids who take pills at parties and things, that's when the death curve went off the rails. That is the crisis. So the crisis is made up of those kids who are not chronic using enough to be an addict. They're not shooting, they're not snorting, they're not smoking. These are people who are taking an occasional pill to get a little buzz at a party, have some fun, and they're dying from it. These people are now added to the death numbers. The kids who took those kind of pills that were legal pills all through here, they never got into the death numbers. So it's the same behaviors. Nothing's changed in behavior. What's changed is there's a chemical out there in all of these pills that's reaching out to kill these kids. So I want to be clear about something. Kids were taking OxyContin here. They were taking Xanax here. They were taking Percocet here. They were always taking these pills for recreational purposes. But if they didn't take enough to get addicted, they never came under anybody's radar. Why? Because they used it once, twice, 3 times, 5 times, and then went on with their lives. Because they were legal pharmaceutical pills that somehow that guy got to play around with in a recreational way. These are not legal pharmaceutical pills. The Mexicans have dumped mass numbers of these pills on our market. They're not legal pills anymore. The legal pills are being stopped by the government. These are all the illegal pills that are back feeding. These are fake counterfeit pills that look like OxyContin, look like Xanax, look like Vicodin, but they're not. They're pure fentanyl. And because they're pure fentanyl, 1 in every 20 is going to be lethal. So that's what this crisis is all about. These are the kids who take a pill at a party and who don't ever become addicted. They used to just become nothing. They took a few pills and they went on with their life. Now they become dead and they become a statistic. That's the crisis we're talking about. And that's what the paradigm shift is. So let's talk about fentanyl and why it caused this problem. What is fentanyl? It's a synthetic chemical. Synthetic chemical simply means man-made. It was invented in 1959 as a wonder drug for pain and was a synthetic version of morphine. Why do we like synthetics? We love synthetic chemicals, particularly we love synthetic drugs. Why? Because they're man-made. We can make as much as we need whenever we want from any kind of materials we want. There are always multiple ways to get to that chemical structure that we want. So we have these massive economies of scale. We're not relying on a plant or some fungus in the wilderness. We can make it at our will. Maybe more importantly, however, is we can do what's called analogging. We can make minor modifications to the molecule because we invented it. The molecule God gave us is what it is, and there's nothing we can do with it. The molecule we invented, we can manipulate, and we can change its functional groups and have it behave somewhat different. We can, in other words, dial in what those chemicals do. And in the world of drugs and pharma, we can dial in what those drugs do. So we love synthetic chemistry. It's a wonderful thing. It's allowed for the modern world. It's fantastic. Fentanyl was one of those synthetic inventions in 1959, and it was a fantastic invention that was really, really been used for 50 years to treat pain in a way that nothing else could. It's a fantastic drug. It's about 100 to 10,000 times stronger than its plant-based cousins. So it's got this tremendous potency, so you don't have to use very much of it. It doses and levels that are amongst the lowest in all the drug world. Okay, and because of that potency, as an illicit drug used by traffickers, it's much cheaper to make, it's much easier to transport, right? So producing and selling it for a trafficker is a really simple decision. Heroin's almost all but gone. So what did I say about the potency? The potency is 100 to 10,000 times that of natural morphine. So what does that mean? Intrinsically, it doesn't matter that it's, I mean, doctors love it that it's so potent. It's easy to work with. It's got a very fast metabolizing. It's a great thing in hospital. Doctors love fentanyl. It's great stuff. But what do I mean about its potency? Well, let me put this in perspective for you. You see the sugar cube here on the left. A sugar cube weighs about a gram, an old lump of sugar, right? It weighs about 1 gram. If I divide that by 1,000 times, I get a milligram. So that 1,000th of the sugar cube is what I call a milligram. That's about where diacetylmorphine and most drugs dose. That's where your Tylenol doses. If I take that milligram particle and then divide it 1,000 times again, I get a microgram, 10 to the minus 6 grams, okay? So now I've got a microgram. That's about the size of a small grain of salt. That's how fentanyl doses. So picture this, if you will. You've got a drug trafficker who's taking that little fine grain of salt, about 100 micrograms, and trying to mix it into about a 30-gram bag of a 300 milligram bag of cutting agent, and to do so reproducibly and never put 2 of those grains of salt in which case they'll kill the person. Can't be done. They don't have the technical capacity to do it. And that's why so many people die. That's the problem of fentanyl. So fentanyl is easier to make and acquire than other opioids. It's easier to ship and smuggle than other opioids because of its low volume necessary, because of its potency. It's significantly more profitable for those reasons, and it's far more potent. So this is what the potency means. This amount of heroin and this amount of fentanyl equal the same market application. So if you're a drug trafficker who's trying to hide this stuff from cops and trying to get it across borders secretly, what are you going to do? It's a no-brainer, right? That's about 1 million doses on the street, that little brick in the guy's left hand. Okay, that's the potency factor, right? That's the potency factor as a business model. But here's the potency factor as a threat. And this is actually a scaled model. I did this because I know how these things are mixed. I know how drugs are compounded. So we call, in the pharma industry, we call excipient. Your drug dealer would call that his cutting agent. And you mix that with something called API, active pharmaceutical ingredients, be your drug, and you get a mix. And this is what you're going to sell on the street. And this is about how they would mix. Why? Because they don't have PhD degrees in physics, and they don't have $3 million mixing chambers with Fourier transform infrared spectrometers that people like me sell to them. They don't have any of that. They have a bullet blender and no education. And so when they mix it, they get this. Pharma would get a perfect distribution of 1 red dot for every 100 green dots, perfectly distributed in this whole model. But that's not what the drug trafficker gets. The drug trafficker gets a bunch of these that have nothing in them. He gets a bunch of these light doses. He gets a few handful of really good ones, and everybody else dies. That is every batch made. So every time they print up a bunch of pills out of a fentanyl stock, about 1 in 5 is going to kill the person who takes it. And that's DEA data from seizures. These are highly, highly, highly lethal pills. So everybody asks me the question all the time, why would somebody make a product that kills their customer? Well, it's quite simple, right? In the warped world of drug dealing, death is an advertisement, oddly enough. Traditionally, the drug trafficker will kill people every so often. They used to use rat poison because it made everybody believe their stuff was strong. So if I've got this easier to ship and smuggle, more potent, higher profits, easy to make and buy, I've got this one thing on the other side that it kills my customers. But guess what? That's just another benefit. So there's absolutely no reason to do it. They don't care that they're killing these people. They'll never kill all their customers, and every death is a little advertisement for their product in the world of heart addiction. But when you come to the recreational user, you're carrying that same fentanyl death over. It doesn't have the same benefit of death it does in the world of the hardened drug addicts, but it doesn't matter. They don't care. These are depraved individuals. It means nothing to them. Better they make more money and if more people die. So let me tell you how these pills came in. China banned fentanyl manufacturing in 2018. Remember, they dumped it on us in 2013. They made a pile of money while they killed all of these young people in their enemy country. Pretty nice strategy, if you ask me. So in 2018, to make good with the United States, they said, we're not going to make any more of this fentanyl. They stopped all manufacturing and they sent it all to Mexico. Okay, so now the manufacturing is no longer an ocean away. And we went from these Chinese scientists to these expert drug traffickers in Mexico. And they made that marketing decision I spoke of earlier. From anywhere from 2 to 3 million people who were using that powdered drug, they put it into pills and saw they had a market of 25 million people. And really a significant portion of about 100 million people between 13 and 34. This was a great business decision. And look at what we can see about that business decision. In 2015, no pills. 2016, you see some pills. But look at this rate of growth in pill seizures at one office, at the Phoenix field office of the DEA. Look at this rise in pills. So if you multiply that by 100, that's what's really coming in, because interdiction rates are probably 1% or 2%. And then if you multiply that by the number of offices, you easily get to hundreds of millions of these pills coming in that were zero just a few years ago. This is the effect of the Mexican traffickers getting hold of all the manufacturing. And right now, DEA says that somewhere between 25 and 40% of all the pills they're seizing will kill the person who takes it. And this is where I want to stop and bring this home here. These are the pills that are going to make their way to the North Shore of Long Island. These are the pills that your son or daughter are going to have on offer at a party by someone who has a prescription. This is what they're going to get. A pill pressed by a Mexican trafficker. And it's just not the way our brains work. A kid doesn't look at that pill at a party in Port Washington, New York, and make the track back to a Mexican drug lord. They think it's legit. Even if they've heard all this, they think it's legit. And look at the pills. We got a fake one and a real one. Which one's which? Right? Kids at a party in dark. You want to bet your life on that? On your ability to tell the difference between those two pills? Strangely enough, the one on the right is the fake. Looks better than the one on the left. Okay, so this is what's happened. So these things that turned up in all these pills are what find their way to your kids. And I don't know how many kids in America don't take a Xanax. About some studies show 30 to 35% of college-age kids, of college students, admit to have taken some kind of a prescription drug recreationally without a prescription. 35%. It goes to 40% when you take college-age kids who aren't in college as well. Okay, so what was the old paradigm? You fooled with drugs for the reasons you do. Recreational, you wanted to be rebellious, you had an injury and you took it too long beyond your prescription, okay? That developed a chemical dependency. You didn't get any good help for that chemical dependency. You developed a real true addiction. Now you had about 8 years statistically that you were going to die, okay? From the time you became addicted, you, statistically speaking, 8 years of deeper and deeper use until one day, 8 years later, you just took too much because you wanted the high more than you wanted to live and you died, right? And you never got clean the first time through rehab. You went in, you went out, you went in, you went out. That's the old paradigm. Fool with drugs, get a chemical dependency, takes a year or two before you get a real addiction, takes 8 more years and you die. New paradigm, right? You fool with the same drug for the same reasons, recreational reasons, rebellious reasons, injury, whatever, and then you die the first time you take it, maybe the 20th time or somewhere in between. That's it. That's the new paradigm. And so what is a drug rehab going to do to stop that? Nothing. What is a new medically assisted program with new Vivitrol or something? Nothing. What is a new drug counseling technique going to do? Nothing. We need new solutions for this new paradigm. And it's this paradigm that's coming for your children. I honestly, Port Washington, New York, I don't know how many kids are going to become addicted. Some will, of course. But how many kids in Port Washington become, hardened addicts to opioids? Not too many. But how many kids take a Xanax at a party? Most of them. And right now, that's a lethal thing to do. So we have to tell these kids something they need to know. Awareness, right? Awareness. We've got to get to the kids with an awareness message. And we have to tell them, we have to exploit the fact that when they go in and take that pill at that party, there are two things going on there. Number one, they're making a decision in the moment. When you look at addiction, the decision to become addicted was a long decision over the course of a year or two. And the decision to stay an addict took 8 years long with a lot of attempts to stop. That's 8-10 years of time to get in there and try to interrupt that process and help the person. Under our new paradigm, that decision to do something that kills them is made in the moment, like in the moment of the last 30 seconds. So we have to take advantage of the fact that we know they're going to make a decision in the moment. But what's the other thing we know? We know from a new thing we see all over the place, the kid who's dead with a half a pill next to them. They're taking a half a pill. What does that tell us? It tells us in addition to that decision being made in the moment, it's being made with a significant component of indecision. They don't know if they want to do it. We have to find a way to message to them to build up that indecision, that doubt part, to not do it. That's all we can do. There's nothing else we can do. For this new paradigm, we're not going to stop it from coming in. It's too small. It gets through the border. It's too easy. We're not going to stop it from getting in the streets. We're not going to help with drug rehabs or medically assisted treatment programs. The only thing we're going to be able to do is get to each and every one of these kids and leave them with the message, that pill will kill. You want to rebel? Find something else. You want to have recreational fun? Find something else. You want to be a dumb kid? Go do something else dumb. This is not the thing to do. My way of messaging this, I use the principle of the Geico insurance company that says 15 minutes could save you 15% on car insurance. What is that advertisement? That is not an advertisement to make you buy car insurance. It's an advertisement to plant a seed in your brain so that when you come up against your car insurance decision 3 months later, 6 months later, a year later, this Geico seed will come back and reassure you that you could get that insurance for 15% less. What does it also rely on? It relies on the fact that most people only interact with their car insurance a handful of times. And in times they do, they're pretty frustrated because they don't like the price. They interact with their car insurance when the rates went up, they got a ticket, they got a new insurance policy, had an accident. And Geico wants that seed to come back and speak to you and say 15%. We have to do the same thing. We have to put a seed in the brain that says it can kill. Why? Because we know when that kid's making the decision, there's an indecision. They're a little afraid. They're not sure. We want our seed to talk to them and say, it is bad. Be afraid. Don't do it. Same concept. It's not a direct advertisement to make you do something. It's a seed planted in your brain that will germinate later at the right moment, because it's a decision that's made in the moment. That's the way we have to communicate on these kids, okay? So with that, I'll just show you, these are kids of the new paradigm. I know each and every one of these kids personally. As you can see, these are kids that look just like your kids. These are not the before and after, where there's an after where the kids got, a different look. And these are kids who looked like this at their funerals. Okay. And the bottom three are a 2-time Olympian discus thrower who is 6'3", 320, a Division I linebacker for the University of Northern Arizona, and a Major League Baseball pitcher, all of whom died with training room Percocets. This is what's going on. These are the people of the new paradigm. None of these people were addicted. None of these people were operating in substance use disorder. You see, if I were here 10 years ago, talking to parents in a place like Port Washington, New York, I'd be trying to convince you that your kid's going to fool with drugs. You know, your 13-year-old, who you can't even think of that way, is going to fool with drugs, get themselves chemically addicted to it, and then get themselves stuck on it and not be able to get off of it. And you're only going to half listen to that. But I'm telling you that all your kid has to do is take one pill at a party, snort a line of cocaine. You don't have to go that far, but that's another thing that can kill them. Take one Xanax pill, an Adderall pill. We just had Ohio State University 2 weeks ago, 2 students who took Adderall pills from friends in the dorm and they're dead. And if you looked at these 2 students, I mean, these people were like highly achieving students. They were probably taking the friend's Adderall because they had an online study session. One Adderall pill ain't going to hurt anybody, ain't going to make anybody addicted, isn't even going to get you buzzed. But it killed them. This is the message we have to get out. This is the new paradigm. And unfortunately, the country is doing nothing about it. We have to get awareness out there for the non-addicted. We have to teach these kids something that they need to know, right? And they're kids who do talk to their parents. Here's the message I really want to leave with everybody to start to populate out where you can, okay? There is a message for everyone in this, for the whole family and all of society. Americans are too cavalier with pills, right? It comes from a good thing taken too far. We've got all these wonderful medications that can do these great things for us, but we've gotten spoiled. We can't live with any pain. We can't live with any anxiety. We can't live with any imperfection because there are too many pills that can solve it. We've become too cavalier. And I'm not here as some extremist to say we don't want these pills. Heck, my daughter suffered from a tremendous acute mental illness her whole life, and we had her on different medications. Nothing wrong with those meds. Hey, when I got a headache, I love my Tylenol. But there's a point when we take it too far, and it's a pill for everything, and everybody sees their parents taking pills and all their friends taking pills, and it becomes very cavalier. And then we lead to the real problem, is that we're too cavalier with other people's pills. We're way too cavalier in sharing pills. And I'm going to tell you a small story. My daughter died on January 11th of 2018. We live here in Manhasset. And at her funeral here in Manhasset, St. Mary's Church, during the funeral and the affair at our house, my daughter died from a deception of thinking she was getting a different medication and got fentanyl, and it killed her. At that funeral, 2 of my wife's Manhasset girlfriends, not 1, 2, 2 of my wife's Manhasset friends said to her, because of the stress she was going through, loss of her daughter, "You want one of my Xanax?" Think about that. Think about that. That is exactly what killed my daughter not 4 days before. And they didn't think twice to say it. We're too cavalier, right? And we're lulled into this complacency because America's had this perfectly squeaky clean pharma system. There are no, we've never had a counterfeit problem in America. It's the first time, and it's fallen on us like a ton of bricks, and we've had no time to react. If 3 years ago your kid took a Xanax at a dorm room, it was almost certainly a Xanax made by a pharma company 3 years ago. 3 years later, it almost certainly is not. And then it's a 1 in 20 chance it'll kill them. It's just too much. It's too fast. We need to break the cycle of all this. So I go back and I sort of complete this on what I call the magic wand question. In social science, we do the magic wand question. If I had a magic wand that could do one thing and I could wave it over, what would I ask the magic wand to do, right? It's a social science thought experiment because it allows me to focus on what the solutions are that I really need. So if I went into the drug problem of 2012, drug death problem, and I could wave a magic wand to get one problem solved, what would it be? It would be the problem of addiction. In the year 2010 or 2012 or 2007, I would have said, solve addiction. And then all drug death would go away because the only people who died were people who were hard addicts, right? These are the only people dying. But today, if I could wave that same magic wand of addiction, I wouldn't get rid of the worst part of the problem. I would get rid of the smaller part of the problem. Because as I showed you earlier with my charts, the bigger part of the problem is that people don't have addiction, so wouldn't be touched by that magic wand. What's the new magic wand? What does it have to do? If I can wave a magic wand over our society so that tomorrow morning, not a single man, woman, or child would ever again take a pill not prescribed by their doctor with their name on it at CVS where they picked it up. If I could have that happen tomorrow morning with my magic wand, I would save 75,000 lives next year. When the magic wand question changes, you are clearly in the midst of a paradigm shift. When you're in the midst of a paradigm shift and you continue to operate to the old paradigm, one of life's few guarantees is that you will fail. And if you look at the numbers in our opioid crisis, we are failing miserably. And it is because we have a new paradigm and we're operating to the old paradigm. We need to get the word out again and again about the new paradigm. So 2 things I need to leave you here with tonight. Number 1, you've got this new paradigm. So that means your kids are at risk. Fentanyl is in your living room. Believe me, there isn't a person on this call whose kids are not threatened by this. Some kids in Port Washington will die soon of this. I promise you. This comes into your living rooms, number 1. And number 2, we have to understand that the new paradigm needs new solutions. So as a citizen, you have to push your elected officials and your and your friends and everybody to this message of a new paradigm and new solutions. Otherwise, this is going to continue to grow. We had 150,000 last year. My data shows that it won't plateau until about 250 to 300,000. We will get to the point of a World War II every year. And we're on track to do it because we're doing nothing to help. So that's my message to you. Please absorb it, internalize it, bring it to your families, bring it to your kids, and beg your kids. Forget about the moralizing. The beauty of my message is you don't have to moralize with your kids anymore. This isn't a moral discussion about using drugs. This is a discussion that says, I love you and I want you not to die. Please don't do this. No moralizing. And I sure hope we have some questions. Thank you very much for listening.
Michael, thank you.
Thank you, Kathy.
Really, like I could cry to think of the pain that you went through. So thank you for sharing your wisdom with us, because it does seem like it's terrifying to hear and to see your beautiful daughter's face. Like I can only hope that she is watching down on us and offering all of our children a light of protection and the parents to spread this word. So maybe just you mentioned reaching out for solutions, talking to local officials. What does that look like? Does that look like an email campaign, or, can you be more specific on how parents could coalesce kind of an action committee around this?
Yeah, I think it's exactly that. I think there could be an email campaign. It's funny. I spend a lot of time in Washington, not just in this, but even before in my business. And I remember I was sitting in the office of Olympia Snow one time, and I was sitting in the outer office where you sit waiting for the senator to come in for the meeting. And the fellow sits there at a desk and he checks you in. He's answering the phone. And there was an important vote that day on the floor. And he was answering the phone, and he'd pick up the phone, yes. And he'd say, Senator Snow's office, yes. And he'd and hang up the phone, and he'd hit a clicker. He'd pick up the phone, same conversation, hit a click. And he did this about 40 minutes as I sat there. And he was clicking this one, clicking this one, clicking this one. And Senator Snow walks in, she leans over her desk and looks at me and says, what are my numbers? And that's how she voted. We still have that power. They care what you think. And so right now, the Congress is not doing anything with this, right? State of New York is better. Nassau County is really good, by the way. I mean, that's the irony of my doing this presentation. Nassau County is really good. Pat Ryder's great. His drug task force, these guys are first class all the way. I mean, I work all over the country, and Nassau County is about as good as it gets. But at the national level, we're not doing this right. We're not doing it right at all. We're completely messing this up. We're still operating to that old paradigm. They have to understand that we have to do something to prevent your kids dying. And I don't say that your kids can't be addicts. They will. Some of them will be, of course. Some of them will suffer that terrible disease of substance use disorder. But what's going to attack your community much bigger is this. And no one's doing anything to stop it. No one's doing anything to help you. Locally, yes, but I mean, at the national level, no, we're not doing anything as a country to stop it. So yes, email campaign to the senators, to the representatives, and just talking about it, right? That's how all this stuff really gets done, is talking about it to your friends. If I can tell 10 people and each of them tell people, and then onward and onward, and everybody says, wow, this is something new. I was on Eddie Kobilis, who I think is here with us. Eddie Kobilis, my partner in the Fentanyl Awareness Coalition. So we were on this Brian Kilmeade show this morning and giving this perspective on it. And I've gotten 200 messages today saying, wow, I never heard that before. Why doesn't anybody talk about this the way you do? I mean, it's just not the way the country thinks about the problem. And why? Simple, because people don't like change. Because we think of the drug problem, and we have a certain image we think of, and we have a certain set of solutions we think of, and we've had them for like 100 years, and we're just comfortable with them. We trust them, and we just become oblivious to the fact that they're not working anymore because the situation changed. So let's just talk about it.
I have some questions for you that have been typed in directly to me.
Yeah, please.
Do you mind going full screen again so we can see you?
What do you mean full screen?
Oh, can you stop sharing your screen for a moment?
Oh, stop the screen share? Okay.
Please. So first of all, so many grateful parents out there. A lot of parents are wondering if this has been addressed to kids directly. Is there like have you been, I think you were at Schreiber. I'm not sure if you've been to Weber directly, and could you go into the schools and speak to the kids?
I would love to. I would love to. And my message to the kids again is that, this is no longer a moral discussion. This isn't about, you're going to be a bad person, or, you're going to be unemployed and be a bum or something. It's not that conversation anymore. This is, you're going to die. You're going to die. You're probably going to die.
And the next question is, I know that my daughter at Schreiber had this information in her health class, but is it, and maybe Nick, this is a question for your team, but can we make sure that there's education in both Weber and Schreiber health classes, so that this is, one of the weeks they learn about this danger?
Hey, Kathy. Yeah, it's Nick. So this information is, being put into part of the curriculum, as Michael, talked about, it's ever so changing. So, things change year to year. I would say that all of our district's phys ed and health teachers had the opportunity to meet with Michael and ask some really good questions and take part in this forum. So we're excited to just, keep infusing more knowledge into the curriculum. And, we're in discussions with Michael about continuing this partnership and really just, the first step is, with meeting with the teachers and getting it to the educators. And the next step is what we're doing right now, providing this for the parents. And then the third is really getting it in front of our students, because it's such a powerful message. I just couldn't be more blown away and impressed by Michael and the way he presents this material in a real world way that I think everyone can understand.
Yeah, and there's so much heart there. I have another question for you, Nick, too.
Before we get to that, let me just follow up on that point. So when you talk about doing this in the classes, so I think one of the things I want to make sure that I underline here is that I believe, and I'm even just going back to when I was a kid, how I listened to things that were told to me. I think the kids listen to it, they hear it, it kind of makes sense, but they don't really internalize it. What we're really talking about is when the kid gets that Xanax pill in their hand at a party, and they're looking at it, it looks real, and they got it from that kid that they know, and the kid has a prescription. They're just not thinking this is the pill. This is the pill, right? And I think that the problem is for that to get through to them is this saturation requirement that's more than just a health class lecture, and it's more than just the guy from Manhasset coming in and talking to us in health class. It's more than that. And I'll give you an example. About 6 months into COVID, my wife got very angry looking at the television saying, 6 months into this virus, and every man, woman, and child knows, wear a mask, social distance, wash your hands. She said, where are the 3 things you're all supposed to know about fentanyl and pills? And that's very real. And so that wear a mask, social distance, wash your hands, that didn't come from a one-day thing in a health class. That came from a constant saturation from 360 degrees around you in society all day, every day, over and over again. And this problem is 10 times worse than COVID. So that's when I talk about getting to your senators and your representatives and getting this at a national dialogue level, because while, yeah, it's great to do it in the health class, and that might get to a kid who might change that behavior and it might save that one life. The sad thing is Eddie Kabilis loves to say, we'll never know the ones we saved. And that's fine with me. We'll never know. That kid who didn't take the pill at the party because of what one of us said, I don't need to know, right? But if we want to move the needle, we have to saturate.
And we have a lot of questions to get to, and I know we only have about 5 minutes left.
Mike.
So.
Okay.
Hi,
Mike.
Ed.
Hi. And Mike, you had mentioned before, one of the questions that's always asked is, why would these dealers want to kill their clientele? And I always think that they don't know these pills that they receive hundreds at a time, thousands at a time. They don't know which pills are lethal and which pills are not. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, same thing. I think that's right. At some point in the supply chain, they don't know. Of course, they're depraved people. They don't care, but they don't know. And then the kid doesn't know. So it's just random. It's a completely random thing.
Right.
And that's, who wants to put your life in the hands of something that random? Crazy.
Yeah, crazy. Yep.
Yeah, thanks, Ed.
Sure.
So just, Nick, this is actually a question for you. Do any of the schools have cameras on the outside parking area so that they could see if kids are kind of trading paraphernalia or drugs? Is that something the school has awareness of?
Hey, it's Nick. I would say I'm not the point person for district security. That's Mr. Miller, one of the Schreiber APs. So I can't speak on all of the cameras. I would say that we do have something called reportit.com. So if things are said, you could on anonymously and report something. We in the district, we do use that and push it out in health classes. If I could just jump on, piggyback onto something Michael was just saying before, like, what's it going to take? And it's going to take so much more. Kathy, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. And it's going to take so much more than that health class just to bridge. I go back to that, like 15 minutes or more could save you 15%. Like, it's going to take that messaging, that like one pill, one party, one pill, one time. And it's either your son or your daughter saying it to themselves when something like this, at a situation like this, is presented to them at an after prom party or a big sporting event, and then they go out after to celebrate, or they're just sitting in a car at the town dock with their friends. It's going to take them either saying it to themselves or saying it to one of their peers, one of their friends, because they get the messaging and the messaging and the messaging, and it becomes second nature, to the point that it doesn't matter the situation that they're presented, but they say it in their head, one pill, one time. That's all it's going to take. And I think just to go back to what Michael's saying, that's so much more than one class in health. So much more than that. It needs to be the constant saturation of the message, just like he's saying.
Yeah, that's going to come from a lot of places. So Michael, can you type your website in, and maybe on your website in the chat and your email, people are asking for the specific wording for a legislative ask. And why don't, if you could give us that, I'll be happy to share that with the overarching community here. But if you could put that even in maybe email to me later,
sure, I will.
Just to help really precisely target the right people and with what we need to say, and we will help start a movement for those upper tier legislative to address the issue. And then another question is, when the parents of younger kids want to start this dialogue, they'd also like a prompt, because let's just say the kid's 12 and hasn't heard of fentanyl or hasn't thought about drug use. Is there a prompt or a conversation for especially really young kids that isn't, maybe it's like what Nick just said, one pill, one time, and just never choose to take a pill from a friend or any other kind of illicit substance. I'm not sure, but if there's like a conversation sparker you could give to help these parents, that would be really great.
So it's funny, I have a specific thought on that, in that I think when we were talking about the old paradigm and the problem of getting into addiction, you wanted to talk to very, very young kids because people became addicted based on trends in their personality and behaviors long before they ever used drugs, when they were even small children. But when we're talking about this, I don't know that there's a lot of value to talking to very young children because they just don't understand it. Until they're in the age to be at the party where it's on offer, I question the value of talking to very young kids. I think the message will be lost on them by the time it matters. But that said, we should go to an age where they would be taking a pill and then back some to make sure we get the kids. I just think the message has to hit them at that point when they're in that range that they're going to go to the party. So again, the conversation starter is really simple. I heard this guy talking who said 1 in 20 of these pills will kill the person who takes it. Please don't do that. I mean, it's a very easy conversation to start because it's so simple and factual. So I think we could have some conversation about at what age we should start this. But unlike the old paradigm addiction message, I don't think there's a lot of value to starting really, really young. Like, I mean, the ONDCP says they want to start messaging around addiction to 5-year-olds, which is probably really valuable. But the people who die at 16 from taking one pill, there's no warning, there's no predictive factor. It's just a decision they make in the moment. All we can do is everything we can do to get into the moment. And that's why the high level top down saturation, as Nick says, is the one that's going to count. It's the one that's going to move the needle.
But Michael, as we're saying, it's like we're talking a lot about the pills, and now it's just like you just said, starting to trickle down to like marijuana, right? So like, I know what I did in high school. I'm sure most of you know too. And I have a very open communication with my son who's 17. It's like, what's the right thing to do? It's like, clearly you don't condone it, but at the same time, do you get it legal? Because they're going to still do what they're going to do no matter what you say. Like, I'm going to share everything from everything you shared with both my kids, but you just don't know. And hopefully, pray to God, never him, but it's going to be someone's going to smoke the marijuana with the fentanyl. Someone's going to take the pill. Like, so how do we, and obviously it's all about conversation, continuous conversation, but it's really scary having a 17-year-old, as you know, and I'm so sorry for your loss. Your daughter was beautiful. And I appreciate all of this, but it's, how do you, in the moment, kids are, I'm also a teacher, like kids are impulsive. And then if they're like drinking a little, it's gonna be like, oh yeah, I'm gonna just try this. I mean, we did it, right? So
They're worse than impulsive, they're stupid. And they're stupid because that's how you learn. So they're made that way. They're made to be stupid so they learn.
Right. But this is like something you can't learn from. It's either like you do it and you die. I mean, that'll be my message to my children, but it's just awful.
At this point on the marijuana thing, we have one reported case that's certified in Connecticut, and it was an accident. It was when they traced it all the way back. I don't think we have yet a reported case of marijuana being intentionally laced with fentanyl. I'm not sure that there's a viable reason to do that. And until we see it, for me, I'm all about facts, right? I'm all about facts. I'm all about truth and facts, hard facts. So we don't want to overstate it either. We just want to know what the truth is. And I'm not sure where the marijuana is ultimately going to fit in. But the one case we have in Connecticut was an accidental. The drug dealer didn't clean the table after sorting the fentanyl and then rolled the marijuana. I mean, that's what happened, and it cross-contaminated. But you're right. I mean, it's kind of in everything. And yes, we all know we did when we were kids. But one of the things when I've talked to kids, I say it this way: forget about your parents and what they could do. Your big brothers and sisters had a luxury you don't have. They could go to that frat party and snort any lines, take any pill, smoke anything they wanted to. And the worst they were risking was a hangover and a guilty conscience. You will die. And I don't know I don't know. It's unfair. Sure. I don't know. You have iPads. They didn't. I don't know. I don't know how to, how to console you on that. But
No, there's no easy way. It's very difficult, like being in it in the, the ages that my kids are, like how to navigate it. And it's like,
I
you know,
feel
it's like,
for you.
we're honest, like we know you're gonna try things, and we also know like if you do this, you could die, like exactly what you just said.
Yeah.
But kids are
And-
egocentric and stupid and like, no, we know better than you. And I'm like, and you don't, but
But that's why the messaging, the scary thing about this for all of your kids is that in the old paradigm, to get hard addicted to the point of overdosing, you had to have some kind of mental health problem, even if it was minor. You had to be a little depressed, have some anxiety, have social awkwardness. We're talking about totally, absolutely, positively normal kids with no warning signs, right? Who will just do this completely in the moment and die. And when they left your house an hour earlier, they had, the weird thing about all of our kids of the new paradigm, the weird thing about them is, I would bet you the vast majority, if not exclusively, our kids didn't know that night going out that they were going to use any drugs. It just happened. It happened in the moment. It was a spontaneous thing.
And
Right.
so we're all
They're
on that
so
same
focused.
page. Yeah, Robin, thank you for your wise words, because teenagers especially have their prefrontal cortex is not developed. So impulse control is not fully formed. As we know, the rental car
Yeah, boys.
agencies don't let you rent a car until you're 25. But listen, a lot of parents have said that they suggest a peer-to-peer conversation, and they are wondering if siblings of these, sadly, the past teens could actually get together and maybe offer a presentation, either in a video form or even a conversation. But it turns out that my friend who runs an organization called SOS Generations actually has teens doing this. So Michael, I'm going to put you in touch with her, and maybe we can gather, it's Generation SOS. They are actually a teenager focused organization created by teens of addiction who've survived and thrived despite their harrowing experience with drug use. So they actually just this Saturday did a teen presentation by teens on fentanyl. So I'm going to connect you, and then maybe we can work that angle to help our kids listen to peers, because I think every parent basically said, that's going to be a quicker point of entry as a person who's their age. And then my other friend just mentioned, an old grandmother, a saying from her grandmother, I'd rather you cry than I cry. So finding ways to get out the message. I think we're all on the same page. I did see one hand raised, and I think that it's been maybe placed down, but are there any other final words that we'd like to have answered before Michael has to bid us adieu?
I just want to say, Michael, thank you for sharing your story. And again, I'm so sorry for what you and your family have been through. And I think it's amazing, the journey that you're taking to help others. So thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you very much. I would close in this way. I argue for this new paradigm thinking that will find its way to our national consciousness so that we can address this saturation thing I'm talking about to really move the needle on the 75, 80,000 deaths that are peculiar to this type of dynamic. That said, yes, you should write your congressman, your senator, you should do what you can at that level. But remember what we're doing here, and every conversation you have, you don't know what's going to reach what kid. So every conversation you have with your child, with your child's friends, with your friends who talk to their children, you don't know, somewhere, something you say will plant as a seed, and some kid will not take a pill at a party and will live. So everything we do helps. Everything we do helps. We want to move the needle at the social level. There are very specific things we have to do, and it's a big lift. And I'm working on the $15 billion of federal funding I need to do that. But in the meantime, every little thing we do might reach one kid, and that kid's going to live. So keep it up. Just keep believing.
Yeah. And Michael, really, thank you from the bottom of my heart. There's so many parents who've just expressed their condolences, and just the heartfelt way you presented all this information. Your passion really came through. So thank you again. And for everyone else, please spread the word. This is going to live on the Schreiber YouTube homepage, and we'll definitely put it in all the newsletters, and we'll send out an email blast, and hopefully technology worked and it's going to be there, but it's going to be there, and we'll get the word out to as many more people in this community as possible.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks for listening.
Thank
Great
you.
job. Great
Thank
job,
you
Mike.
for all your work, your hard work.
Thanks, Kathy.
Yeah, thanks, Nick. That was really amazing.
Great.
Really
So
appreciate
great.
it.
So great. Yes.
Yep, terrific job. And I'll go check the YouTube recording now, and we'll send it out